story of a man who, for 20 years, was untouchable. He sat on the Forbes list. He owned record labels, fashion brands, a billion-dollar vodka empire. He threw parties that everyone in the world wanted an invite to. And when something went wrong inside those parties, he had the money, the lawyers, and the non-disclosure agreements to make it disappear.
In 2016, one of those things that went wrong was captured on a hotel security camera in Los Angeles. He paid $100,000 in cash for what he was told was the only copy. He asked the guard 3 times if anything had been saved to the cloud. 8 years later, that footage aired on CNN. And the empire that took him 30 years to build began to collapse the moment it played. To understand this case, you have to understand who Shawn Combs was. Diddy, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, Love. He kept changing the name. The brand never changed. He built one of the most powerful record labels in hip-hop history. He discovered some of the biggest artists of the 1990s. He won Grammys. He ran a fashion line. He launched a vodka that sold for $1 billion. He had 7 children. He hosted award shows. Presidents called him a friend. He met Cassie Ventura, who performed as Cassie, in 2005. She was 19, he was 37. She signed to his record label the next year. Over the next decade, on and off, they were partners in work and in life. For most of the public, that partnership looked like glamour, red carpets, Grammy after-parties, private jets, a young singer, and one of the most powerful men in music. Behind the closed doors of private homes and booked-out hotel floors, prosecutors would later say it was something else entirely. But for a very long time, nobody could prove a thing. On the night of March 5th, 2016, Cassie Ventura walked out of a hotel suite at the Intercontinental in Century City, Los Angeles. She was in a hoodie. She was walking fast. A hallway security camera captured what happened next. Shawn Combs came around the corner after her. What the footage shows, the world now knows. He caught up with her. He put his hands on her. He did not stop until he chose to stop. Then he walked back into the suite. Cassie didn't call the police. She stayed. The next morning, she wore sunglasses in every photo. She would later testify it was to cover a black eye. According to trial testimony, within hours of what happened, Combs sent a man to the hotel's security office. The man carried a paper bag. Inside, $100,000 in cash. He asked for every copy of the footage. He made every employee sign a non-disclosure agreement. He asked specifically if anything had been uploaded to the cloud. He was told no. He believed it. For 8 years, he was right. In November of 2023, Cassie Ventura did something she had never done in 18 years of knowing Shawn Combs. She filed a lawsuit. The complaint, filed in federal court in Manhattan, alleged years of physical abuse, coercion, and control. Within 24 hours, the case was settled for a reported $20 million. Combs admitted no wrongdoing. He paid, and he expected it to end there. But the filing had cracked a door open.
Within weeks, more women came forward. Then more. Civil lawsuits piled up across multiple states. And somewhere inside the Department of Homeland Security, a unit that specializes in human trafficking crimes began quietly building a federal investigation.
In March of 2024, federal agents raided his homes in Los Angeles and Miami on the same morning. Then, on May 17, 2024, 8 years and 2 months after that night at the Intercontinental, CNN published the hotel footage, the tape he had paid $100,000 to erase. The tape he had asked 3 times about the cloud. It had survived, and now the entire country had watched it. Combs posted a video apology. He said he was truly sorry. He said he had sought therapy, but the damage was no longer something an apology could fix. In September of 2024, he was arrested in New York. Federal prosecutors charged him with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The charges carried the possibility of life in prison. And for the first time in his adult life, Shawn Combs could not buy his way out of the room he was in. The trial began in May of 2025. It lasted 7 weeks. Dozens of witnesses took the stand. Cassie Ventura testified for 4 days, pregnant with her 3rd child.
A second woman, identified only as Jane, testified under a pseudonym. Former employees testified. Former assistants testified.
Rapper Kid Cudi, who had briefly dated Cassie, testified about a car of his that had been mysteriously set on fire years earlier. The jury heard about the private gatherings that prosecutors said Combs and his inner circle called freak-offs, or hotel nights. Long, orchestrated encounters, drugs, cameras, hired performers, women who said they had no real way to leave. And then, on July 2nd, 2025, the jury came back with a verdict that nobody had predicted. Not guilty on racketeering conspiracy, not guilty on sex trafficking, guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Charges brought under a federal law from 1910 called the Mann Act. The most serious accusations, the ones that could have put him in prison for life, the jury rejected. But on the narrower charge, that he had paid to fly people across state lines for these encounters, they said yes. In one afternoon, he had been simultaneously convicted and acquitted. Legally, he walked out from under the most serious allegations of his life. But nobody in the courtroom that day mistook the verdict for innocence. In October of 2025, Judge Arun Subramanian sentenced Shawn Combs to 50 months in federal prison, 4 years and 2 months. Prosecutors had asked for more than 11 years. His lawyers had asked for 14 months. On April 9th, 2026,
his legal team appeared before a federal appeals court in Manhattan. They argued 2 things. First, that the sentence was unfairly harsh, a den, that the judge had punished him for conduct the jury had acquitted him of. Second, that the private encounters at the center of the case were, in their view, protected by the First Amendment as a form of amateur filmmaking.
The appeals judges questioned both sides sharply. One called it an exceptionally difficult case. They have not yet issued a ruling. Shawn Combs is currently serving his sentence at a low-security federal facility in New Jersey. His scheduled release date is April 2028. Cassie Ventura gave birth to her 3rd child days after testifying. She has not commented publicly on the verdict. For most of his life, Shawn Combs operated by a rule that a lot of very powerful people operate by. That anything uncomfortable could be signed away. That anything that couldn't be signed could be paid for. That anything that couldn't be paid for could be erased. It almost worked. But the world has changed underneath that rule. Surveillance systems back up to servers now. Hotel staff sometimes keep copies at home. A woman who stayed silent for 18 years can file a single lawsuit and crack a story open in an afternoon. The verdict in this case won't satisfy anyone, not fully. The people who believed he was guilty of the worst charges feel he was handed a gift. The people who believe the trial was an overreach feel he's being punished for conduct the jury refused to convict him of. But the quiet story underneath all of it is simpler. Silence has a shelf life, and his ran out. This story was never really about a celebrity trial. It was about the red threads, a hotel tape that a security guard kept a copy of, even after being paid $100,000 to destroy it. a civil lawsuit filed by a woman who had stayed silent for nearly 2 decades that was settled in under 24 hours. And one question, is it on the cloud, that a very powerful man asked 3 times in a hotel office in 2016. Most people saw a fall from grace, but the details told a different story. A story of a man who thought he had erased everything, and a world that had quietly kept receipts. That's what we do here. We follow the red threads. One case at a time. One story at a time. If that's something you want to be a part of, subscribe to the Red Threads. The next story is already waiting.